Welcome. We are here in the second webinar, live stream from Tamera, from the IGP. And we are all very excited because it's working. Great. And today I just looked to the news in the world and we have this information about the Gaza Strip being bombarded again, or about climate change. The news in Spain say today that summers are now 5 weeks longer than in the 80s, which is still on my lifetime. And so there are big changes going on in the world. And somehow we need concepts, ideas, plans for a future worth living for our children. And I hope this course and the Healing Biotopes plan is a contribution to it. And that's in the world, and today in our Tamerian world, we had also a very intense day. We had whole day community day, trying to find the positions that are needed for our guest season to be ready. And we are also coming to the end of winter of planning, how we want to live in 2030. And we are just coming to an end to give homework to the institutions that will make possible that we can build here. Yes, and so I'm very thankful that Martin Winiecki and Saskia Breithart are here for us after such an intense day. And I want to present them. Martin Winiecki is the head of the Institute for Global Peace Work and has been very engaged politically since his youth. He developed together with Shamba Ayalon the online courses, the two that we are running and the future ones. And inshallah, yes. And he's a networker and somehow the mother of our Defend the Sacred Gatherings. And also part of the planning organ of Tamera. And we also have Saskia Breithart, which is a reference in the community, part of the Women Council in Education, mother of a child, and she's also taking responsibility about the issues of conception, conscious conception and contraception, And she's also part of a group of people that research in the altar and in this area of communication with all beings. And so very close to Sabine Lichtenfels in the research. Yes, so thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And we start with some questions from the first lesson, the Healing Biotopes plan. And I read a quote. The concept of the healing biotope originated with the idea that there must be a structure, we can call it the cultural crystal, that initiates a process of self-replication, like a biological cell. Once the structure is sufficiently developed and complex. This cultural crystal would be a universal structure applicable to all peoples and continents. In other words, the image of a healing biotope came from an intention to create a morphogenetic field for a new humane world. Evolution moves forward through creating morphogenetic fields. Yes, and this quote we can take as orientation. And there was still some questions that we thought are relevant to still bring to this webinar. One from our student Heidi. She asked, how can we create biotopes or models that are so powerful that they can gradually overcome the capitalist system as a real alternative? So I think Martin will start with the question.
Okay. Yeah, thank you first of all for this introduction and also for this highly relevant question, because that, really summarizes the intention of the Healing Biotopes project. It is a different thought of how to make system change than we find in most of the political thinking in our time, where usually we think of mass mobilizations, we think of overthrowing states, widespread campaigns, but the Healing Biotopes kind of take an approach that is almost the other way around. Instead of spreading into quantity and the principle of force, trying to overpower the system, Healing Biotopes look into what is the underlying principle of capitalism and what is a structure of life that can actually disable it. And so when you look into how capitalism developed, then you see, for example, how everywhere culture has turned into a mass culture. It has been homogenized. Everywhere around the world, before this kind of globalized capitalist mass culture existed, you had regions that were autonomous in not only in their communities, but also in their economic structure, in their agriculture, in their spirituality. The world was based on communities. And so it is a first logical idea that if we really want to overcome capitalism, we not only have to overcome the economic structure of a surplus economy, but we also have to kind of restore that fundamental basis of human culture, which capitalism has eroded, not only with economy, but also with the mindset it has put into people's brains, which is really that of selfishness, egotism, competition, fear, ultimately. And so, in a way, when do healing biotopes become so powerful that they overcome capitalism? The answer is when they have found a structure of community that is so strong in itself, because it creates coherence, not despite but because of the diversity. So it can integrate so many aspects of life into a structure of trust and real unity in diversity, is something that Bookchin said. If that can no longer be broken, and if you look actually into all the revolutionary moments you find that happened in history, you find that movements could always promote a real transformative power so long as they had this coherence and trust among them. And what happened though many times was that at some point they could be broken because the trust and the solidarity between them was limited. So there was an unconscious trauma that the people were kind of caught by without knowing, and that was the point where the old power structures could kind of come in and break the movements apart. And so if you imagine that you have centers on Earth where people go so deep in the consciousness work, where they understand the trauma in a way that it no longer breaks them apart but brings them together, then you actually have a motor for a revolution which no longer will fail in this kind of moment. Capitalism is a consciousness phenomenon, or a psycho-spiritual disease, you could almost say. And if we heal that, then we have a power of unification, which can bring us together. Then it's no longer conquer and rule, but unify and cooperate, or unify and heal. You know, it's a different principle of power which we have to discover, I think.
So not from divide and conquer to, how do you say it? Unify.
Unify and heal.
Oh yeah, I like it. Yeah. You want to add something, Saskia?
I could add that, because part of the question is how can they actually be more powerful, no? Like how is
overcome, how can we overcome,
Yeah. And one very important thought for me is that original connection within a community and of the community with life itself is a basic reality of life which is imprinted in ourselves. Like it is a structure of reality, and as soon as a group of people reconnects to that structure of reality that exists within themselves and in the world, that power is activated, and it will also activate more people without even needing to speak with them, because life is interconnected all the time. And that's, in a very brief way, a basic thought of why such single models could actually be more powerful. But it's I think it's a valuable line of thought.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are getting more concrete with the next question from Adele. She says, you pointed out the importance of trust, which is to a large degree a counter vision for the idea of checks and balances in a democracy, for example, through the division of powers. Do you nevertheless embrace democracy as a guiding principle for the healing biotopes? And if not, what is your alternative vision? Yeah.
I mean, I would say that the healing biotopes certainly embrace democracy as a principle of the self-governance and self-determination of new communities, but that concept of democracy is very different from the concept of bourgeois democracy. You know, it is because in a way, like, I mean, I'm grateful that we have moved from a feudalistic society to a bourgeois democracy. Like, it is a progress historically, and still, I think the redemption, you know, of this, the dream of democracy, in a way, is also a return to its origin. And I mean, democracy originated in actually even before Athens in tribal societies, and those have been the forms of authentic grassroots democracy. So, in the current form of representative democracy, you have this principle of delegation of power. You institutionalize power in the hands of elected officials, and so actually there is no vital democracy. So you still have hierarchy and domination going on. But if you imagine that people live in communities that are really based on trust Also in questions of decision making, of authority, then you don't even need that, because people will be in communication with each other, and you can and you can actually make decisions in a very different form. And I think this is where we are going towards, where this as a goal. And still, I also want to be careful with this term grassroots democracy, because it can easily also be misunderstandable, because at least how we approach it in Tamara, for us it doesn't mean that we kind of say that everybody is equal in terms of their authority, because it's just not true socially. Because when you look into a group, given on the knowledge and wisdom people carry, or the structures they have, people enjoy different degrees of authority. And so in a way, this is where you have to begin with, and you also have to acknowledge that. But the point really is a practice of transparency, where and especially so, the more authority people take in a community, they are visible in what they are doing, and they can also be questioned in the things that they're in the decisions they take, and the things that they are doing. So there is, in a way, we gain this democracy not by, I think also we need structures for that, but we mainly need a process where people really become trustworthy, also in the places where usually we don't show ourselves. So that is actually, I think, really important. And in a way, you can say the more a person takes authority, the more they have to become visible in what they are doing.
This visibility also means they have to become visible or transparent, and also ready to receive questions and critiques and...
Yeah. And but I also guess for the other people that, because it's also easy to be really to demand clarity from an authority figure, because actually you yourself don't want to develop. So I think it's like developing, because in the end what grassroots democracy means that every member of a community actually has reached a level of being able to take responsibility for the whole, so they will no longer blame others for their own things, or just want to delegate responsibility to others. So it is really it is a high level of maturing as a human being, also emotionally, so that we are able to do that. And this is really, we need social structures that enable us to come to this point. And in the transition phase, we also need to acknowledge the difference of authority that exists in groups, but without domination.
And the difference of authority due to the amount of responsibility people are able to take already. This I feel is really the crucial point. Like in Tamara, one can see the people who have most authority are the ones who took the whole of the community and all its complexity into their hearts the most, and actually feel responsible for all of it. And those are the people that are given the trust also to move on, and then everything Martin just said. But often we start to discuss about positions and power games and everything way before we actually asked ourselves, am I ready to take that step and that responsibility as much as others do? And
It just reminded me this joke, I don't know, I think I have seen it in Facebook, like, who wants the change? Yeah, we want the change. And who is ready to change? And then there is no one saying, it's me. Well, thank you for the complexity of the answer. Yeah. Okay, I think we leave it like this with the first question for the moment. It will come back in the course again. And I want to change the issue to this lesson about the sacred matrix. What is the sacred matrix? And I would like to start with a question that says something like, the sacred. It would be wonderful to have the same feeling with humans as with nature or with animals. What can I do to reach this feeling a bit easier? Like this feeling between humans that we can easily perceive in nature. Yeah.
You want to start?
That kind of hits the core of what we're doing now, trying to do, which is creating a field among people where this natural, sacredness and connection, that exactly like in this question, that we do access with nature and animals way easier, how that can actually also be reflected in human community. And I mean, we have to transform a lot of historically learned patterns, or unlearn historically built patterns, in order to re-enter a state where we see the other actually as a divine being, and not as a pure projection of my fears on all levels. And part of the transformational work we do as individuals and as community is constantly shedding light on those patterns, transforming them so that light of sacredness can actually enter into the life among people. But it's not a short answer to that question. It's actually a whole lifetime to dedicate to exactly that, ultimately that beautiful vision of being as purely connected among people as you are in nature. And that's kind of the goal of the journey, I would say. And there are moments where you have it for a minute or something, or also an hour or a day, where you do feel that among people, and then it is staying faithful to that moment. And yeah.
You want to add
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about what is it actually that creates this kind of, what touches us so much when we have this contact with nature, or this contact with animals. And I mean, I think it's like this experience where you look into an opposite that is not blurred or shaded by any kind of defense or attack mechanism that we know so much from human beings and from ourselves and from others. Like, in a way, you get this pure resonance of life, and this is this nourishment that we need. And in a way, it is also like experiencing that. I think it's also a call for each one of us to really, not only to think, okay, I think it's beautiful to acknowledge the longing, but also then to think, okay, how can I become such a resonance organ for other people and for the world? And I mean, the work on truth in community, I think, is so essential to that, because when I just think about where do I experience that among people, I think about the forums that we have now every morning in our community, where we actually try to approach our human intra and interpersonal issues not from this angle of how do we resolve problems, but rather how do I step into the sacred world, the sacred matrix again, and what can I reveal on that path? And I mean, there are really sacred moments where you feel such a different... Yeah, you feel the web of the sacred matrix among people when somebody stands up and speaks from that source. And they can even speak about something that really torments them inside themselves. But if it comes from that place, it is an opener into that world. And so this is... I say that because I think, yes, we know there is so much work to be done, but it's also easy to miss the goal out of sight. But actually it might be much closer than we think.
Yeah, thank you. You brought it really close to oneself, like how to contribute to it. And I also thought, like, this sacredness between human beings, if you think it to the end, are these paradise pictures, no? Where one can be who one is, so to say. Yeah.
And maybe that's a very simple approach, but still, I just thought it's easy with nature, it's easy with animals, it's also, in terms of humans, rather easy with babies. And we all were born as those sacred beings, and of course we grow up, we transform, we take all the load onto us, but also something in that stays and carries through, and that's just to also integrate that cosmic aspect in a way into our perception of human beings, which is not gone, even though it might be hidden, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I go for another question from Serena. She asked, do you have ways in Tamera how you collectively plug in to the sacred matrix, also in a group body or group consciousness? And a similar question, if we do meditations or healing sessions in Tamera to get to this frequency that is described in the book and triggers this power of self-healing. And we started already, but maybe you can concretely name what are the tools or the events or the rituals. Yeah.
I mean, I would say, yeah, there are some practices, and it's not like our main focus or the approach to how to connect to the sacred matrix is not so much through those tools, but rather on a mental and spiritual way to integrate it into our daily lives, and drink a glass of water and remember what is this thing that I'm drinking there, this is a mystery, this is a mystery, and invite that kind of consciousness into our lives. And still there are, like Martin just mentioned, this forum, which is a human space, and still I would consider that also as a tool to try to plug into the sacred matrix on a social level. And then this is always connected to 20 or 30 minutes of each one walking in silence through nature before we actually come together in the forum, which is another simple but practice to, and it's always accompanied with a question that we all ask ourselves, the same question, to connect and to open our antennas and leave daily thinking and our commenting mind as much aside as we can to connect. We don't have it as a fully established culture, but we are also playing with ceremonies and ways of coming together as a community in sacred space that opens that channel collectively. Arts, mainly painting, is definitely a way as a community enter another field, music. Yeah. There are some like this.
Good. I just was thinking how to transport this daily routine that we are having at the moment in the mornings, because now it was named, but just to make it a bit clearer that at the moment, since November, December, the community dedicate 3 hours of the morning. Like we start with 1 hour of, or 3/4 of an hour of connecting geistically, like with thoughts, reading some thoughts and sharing some thoughts. We try to connect with this frequency, and then the community is sent to make a walk in nature with a question. Everyone makes this walk, and then we come together into a circle, what we call forum, and you can check more information. And so this is like a 3 hours arc time together, which is quite out of normal daily life outside there, and this is why I wanted also to name it as a block on how we integrate these kind of spaces now on a daily basis at the moment. Yeah. And thank you for naming all the different aspects. Yeah. Good. Another question. Is it realistic goal to be continuously in contact with this sacred dimension, or is it more a commitment to certain practices which may or may not bring it closer? Just a few more words in this line.
I mean, I think it's a mixture of both. But I think that, if I want to make a really big statement, but it's actually serious, if we want to survive as humanity, we will need to shift the ground on which we stand from a materialistic, fragmented state of consciousness to one rooted in the structure of reality that we call the sacred matrix. So a consciousness in which we acknowledge our interdependence with all life, and where we are connected, but not as an ecstatic explosion, but rather as a transcendental normality to a stream of consciousness that operates through us because we are part of a universe. But I think it's really important that we see that this is possible, but also that it's not this kind of it's not this I don't know, like a trip realm where that we will be living in all the time. I think there's also something quite grounded in that, in being in that space. I think that it also has a lot of very practical repercussions, where, for example, we know that what we eat is based on cooperation and not on violence, for example. This is an expression of the sacred space. Or walking through a city and witnessing something that is not right, and you interfere, you raise your voice, or you ask because you're just not indifferent. So this is actually being part of the sacred space. And I think we all need practices to remind ourselves of the space and to reconnect, but it is also a collective process that kind of brings us into that, and ultimately it is a question of creating a field of consciousness for our collective as humanity to move into that space. Yeah, and that really requires a shift in the core areas in our lives that steer us.
Thank you.
I just want to highlight the word commitment in this question, because I like that it is not just a nice idea or it's like something that just happens, but it takes a commitment, and really takes a commitment to leave the known world and functions to open to this other principles, because it's very different than how we were taught to think and behave, and it's those concrete examples are also really important, not to get too out of space in the idea of what that actually means, but it requires a reconditioning of thinking.
Yeah, I also now thought about these questions that we ask again and again through this winter here in Tamera, like what a shift it is in a person to dare to speak what this person loves, for example, like because we are not used anymore to speak about what we love or what we find sacred or these beautiful experiences in nature, and it's a reconditioning to allow ourselves to show this, to reveal what we love and what we think is sacred. Yeah, I'm a bit touched. Yeah. So thank you for the question. And another question, I think we are just speaking about the same, just from different angles. Now Chris says, to realize the sacred metrics in our life on earth, the crucial point, or one crucial point, is how to handle conflict. What is the idea to do that in the healing biotopes, and which role play rules in that? And if they are relevant, this rule, where do they come from? Who formulates or creates them? Yeah.
Sacred metrics. I mean, the first, I think, yes, it needs, maybe rules is a word that triggers old ideas, no? But you could say orientations, or, and I think a very basic fundament for this are ethical orientations, where it is clear if you come now. When you come to Tamera, it's clear you don't use violence. It is clear that you don't harm anyone or any other creature. It is clear that you decide to at least try and learn communication based on solidarity and mutual support, and that you have this inner orientation of truthfulness. Doesn't mean that you always in all moments need to be 100% truthful. We won't be able to do that, but to have an inner yes and readiness to give that, give this orientation to yourself. And that lays a ground then for people to move, and then of course Tamera uses the forum a lot as one form which supports communication and trust building and all of this. But actually the first thing is a decision of the participants to follow those orientations. And I said jokingly they come from the sacred metrics, because it's true. It's not that one person or a chosen authority sets the rules, but it's actually those are principles of life, and that's why we take them as orientation. Yeah. But maybe you want to...
Yeah, I would just add 2 more rules.
Yeah.
I mean, one is, that we don't just act out this effect, like this, like where we have a, where we feel this emotional reaction coming to, like, I don't know, to do something really mean to somebody else because now we feel unjustly treated, but to catch ourselves and actually let go of this, of something that if we are wise enough, we will know that we will later regret it. And another one that is actually really important, because, a lot of the work is on working with love and sexuality and partnership, is that conflicts in relationships shouldn't be dealt with on a one-to-one basis, because we know that a lot of what we call personal conflict, and especially so in love, actually is the mutual projection of issues that are inside the people. So actually it's one person's issue that then triggers the other, and then it gets entangled and becomes an own entity. But also it is cultural and historical issues that need a different frame. And so actually a lot of the work also in resolving conflict in Tamara has to do with creating a different frame where we don't have to kind of personally identify and feel guilty or blamed or whatever with the topics, but understand that the issues we are suffering in love, for example, but also in other areas, it is because we are part of a humanity that has organized itself in structures where those issues cannot find solution and where those longings can't find fulfillment. And so actually conflict resolution, Saskia already spoke, said that like it needs this readiness to actually enter this track of consciousness work. I just wanted to underline that. But in the end, it not just means, okay, I understand something about myself, but it really means like transforming the notion of selfhood in a way, because we are not these like, if you're just like if you just define yourself as this private, separate self, then you're confident to go to therapy and deal with your topics and so on. But if you understand that you're actually a historical being that stands in a global and even universal context, then you become a co-worker in that global and universal process. And so the identification also shifts from this only personal problem focus to one of I have an issue because I'm a part of humanity and I can collaborate in the solution. I think there is also a step of liberation in this bigger global frame of the issues.
Very important. No, it's really, that's a fundamental understanding.
And this is so interesting because also with like even the term solving conflicts I find problematic because it suggests that like there is the Western mind is so tricky because like we always want we want to come straight from A to B. Like, there is a problem, we want a solution. But if you follow the sacred matrix, like you go a different path. Like maybe that issue that you're suffering is an entrance gate onto your path into the sacred world. And then it's not a solution, but it's a participation in the process. But in order to understand that, you need this wider frame of consciousness. So, and oftentimes only thinking that, only acknowledging that we are in this bigger space already makes us drop this need for a quick solution. You're in a different process.
That was now material to study. I think it's great that we have the material recorded and then one can watch it again and again. Yeah. Thank you. So, I think we leave it now with this issue of the sacred matrix. Thank you. There were moments where it was visible. And we change now to the issue of what is the role of community building in system change. And I take a question from a very young student in our group. She writes, what is your experience with truth in Tamera and other communities you have lived in? Is it a radical truthfulness so that everything can be shared, said? And then she names some things. Dieter Doom stated at many points that our societal problems like suppressed anger or hate, violent fantasies, and sexuality are seen as issues of society that only a trusting community or trusting society can solve. And she asked, are even these kind of intimate topics discussed or talked about in larger groups? And what challenges do you face at Tamera? Where I would guess that people with different backgrounds, ideas, characters meet to live together as a community. And how do you solve these challenges? And we already spoke a lot about forum, and still it is something special that to think that we speak about or that we show suppressed anger or violent fantasies or share about sexuality. So maybe you also find some words.
I mean, shall I? I mean, this is. I mean, of course, it turns around a lot of the terms of, intimacy and all of that. But actually, it is such a treasure for a community. Like it creates a treasure of trust when you can find forms where those innermost intimate issues can be expressed in the plenary, in the place where everybody is, or where bigger groups are there. It creates a different shift for the person that reveals him or herself and the group, where suddenly there is a freedom of, a different dynamic between people where, there is so much of a habit in the society through which in which we grow up, where we feel that which most moves us, which is most essential in us, we have to hide. And so it creates like an unconscious or subconscious defense mechanism. And it kind of also makes it difficult for us actually to really love the communities that we are part of. And so I think it's not only something that it's beautiful to practice, but in a way it is even more. I think it's almost a precondition for a real trust-based society to arise, that such spaces become possible where people can really show themselves. And it was spoken now that forum is a way we do it, but it really is not, it's not so much about the method, it's about the decision of a group to do that, to kind of to take on those inner issues and to handle them responsibly. And with that comes, of course, the necessity to build the consciousness that where you can do that.
Thank you. I think this point is essential to somehow give it a second to say it again, like that it is not the tool, but actually the decision or commitment to stay together and go through all what it's needed to go through, that we can arrive to this trust that we were speaking in at the beginning. No? It is not so much about the tool, because actually the tools can be you can misuse them, but it's more about this commitment to stay together and go through what it's needed.
Yeah, and also very simply, like, how do you deal with the things that come up? Like, how do you deal with raging anger, or with like a very vulnerable point of a sexual revelation, where then the person that revealed themselves feels naked and needs a kind of acknowledgement, and like, so those are, of course, we all want depth, we all want like a beautiful show that we can indulge in, but then how do we participate and respond? So this is as important as the revelation.
And very simply to the question, all of those truths, definitely all of them, because if we don't address truth, then we work on a level that doesn't do any difference. Like, we need to open the lid and look inside, and for this also delicacy that Martin just spoke about, I just want to again underline what he said before of the context in which we learn to understand those processes, because even the most intimate sexual revelation, when you do it in a group and you suddenly see how people respond to it with, wow, you showed us a piece of myself there, you see how much how individualized our culture is, and how actually most of the most intimate topics are the topics of everybody. And then you can also make it even wider and see, not only in this community, but in this whole nation, in this whole, in humanity, those are the steering topics. And I can be of service when I put myself into this vulnerable place, because I have now the protection and the support to do it. And
Thank you. So, another question from Jenny. How much of the spiritual human fullness work at Tamera is focused on community connection, and how much time is given to each person doing work on their own? And how does Tamera guide people to work during their individual time?
We jokingly said earlier 30 minutes a day.
That's the power walk that was mentioned earlier. I mean, a lot is community based, and I mean, there is also, I don't know, I feel there is something where, like, community development and individual development, they are kind of, they're interdependent, they belong together. Like, you cannot build a strong community without strong individuals. And so, and so I feel also that, like, the more the community consciousness grows, the more also there is a need for individuals to really walk their own path and to take responsibility for themselves, and the community kind of has to listen or to that or support that. And so in that sense, I don't know, it even feels funny to me to think now, okay, how do we orient, like, a time for each one, because that process itself in a way is an expression of an individual thing, where I need to take this silence time now, or whatever, I need to now write a book, I need to
Meet a
name
friend.
it, yeah, whatever. And I think community plays an important part in kind of making visible what people are, like to offer space where people can really share what they are up to, what they need, what they want, and where this is met with openness and not like dogmatic rules. And so where they can support out of the community, but it's, maybe other communities have ritualized it more, where there is really like this, and perhaps we also need to do that more in terms of really offering like individual time. But in the way we practice it, I would say it's more just that like community kind of embeds and makes those single processes visible and can support them.
Yeah. And I think it's also still like it's still in development now, because we are also in touch with the practice of vision quest, which could become a ritualized ceremony for the community to take in certain phases, in a certain rhythm, those 3 days and nights solo time off in nature fully, to integrate and incorporate everything that we do throughout the year. But it's not yet like an installed thing,
I somehow have the need to say that it is a lot of time that we invest in community, coming together, gatherings. I don't know another community that dedicates so much time together as community. I haven't been in so many, but yeah. Okay, I think we take now the last question. It says, what kind of different structures of community building do we need to touch all humanity? Like different cultures, different ages, different places. What new system would make sense to create now?
Can you reread it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Or maybe more clearer?
Yeah. The question is, what kind of structures of community do we need to include humanity, so to say?
In order to include humanity.
Like the diversity of humanity.
No, go.
I just thought that for a long time, my understanding of this project of Tamara was that actually we need to represent humanity and model all aspects present in the world and give an answer or a solution to it. Until the picture changed through our growing global network and the different projects and stations in different parts of the world, where I actually saw, no, this is a network growing where the different needs, also the very different cultures in different places, will influence and will color the different models and healing biotopes to emerge in very unique and original ways, while still being united in this guiding principles that are the same, serving life. But how the outcome can be very different, like very different aspects. And so on, just from this cultural point, I mean, we do face those questions often also here, where people from the Arabic world bring their cultural impulses and try to integrate it into the culture that has grown here, and sometimes have hard times doing that. but are also a very important mirror all the time to see what still wants to also be looked at and integrated. And still I personally thought it's not that every single healing biotope needs to represent all of humanity and all its cultural and all its and all its different aspects, as long as it touches the same core of life, let's say.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think two things. One thing, I think that there is also an organic process kind of in the development of a community to open up to the world more broadly. I think it was a natural development in that community to see that at some point, I don't know, around 20 years ago, where the community kind of had this intrinsic kind of wish to engage in creating a global network and to reach out and to build that relation to other projects and, you know, the work of really supporting movements and all of that. And but I think it's also really important, like, not that it is an obligation for communities, but at the same time I feel like it makes just such a huge difference in the consciousness a community is in if it is only related to the problems it faces in and directly around itself, or whether it can see itself as part really of a global process. And in order to be in that consciousness, you know, participating in the global struggles and existential processes that we are going through, I think is really important that the questions don't default to a too small social and psychological level in which they anyways can't be solved. So this is also really a help. And then the other thing is that I think that whenever, I mean, people of certain cultures or racial groups or, you know, certain traditions kind of become like our majorities or even just among themselves, like you just tend to black out a lot of aspects of the world and of reality. And I think for creating a healing biotopes, this is like per se important to be curious, to time and again challenge this notion of this reality field that we are creating, the common cultural bubble kind of, and to ask what else is out there, you know, and because we have to ask ourselves, what is reality? And that means, how do other beings experience reality? You know, and for me this is, it goes all the way to, like, I think at some point it becomes an important question to us: are there extraterrestrial beings out there, or that could be partners in a universal process or not? Like, I don't know. It might be even important already right now, but it changes the concept of the experience of reality that we are in. What aspects of reality we take into consideration. And so, but also for us, like, do I actually include the experience of reality of somebody living in Mozambique, in the place that was now overrun by the cyclone? You know, is that at all part of my consideration, or do I just exist, now to make it really drastic, in a beautiful lifestyle bubble behind the walls of the Western world? You know, and this we are point, period.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was quite visible. Also that we cannot build community choosing, we need one aspect of this, and it will not work like this. It works under another principle of attraction. So, good. So, we are already over time, and I'm thankful for all what have been shared. And I think there is a lot of study material for us, for our students. And I also want to thank the technical team because they have been working so much. Yes. And
thank you to the questions.
Yes.
Thank you all for studying this course.
Great. So, you want to say
No,
something?
no.
Then I would say thank you and goodbye. See you next week, Tuesday again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.